So this is our start. Let me make it big so I can see everybody and my screen. Everybody can see the screen. This is kind of our second session. Our first session, we really got to know each other. And then last time we started talking about what competitive integrated employment was and what is an employment, a culture of employment, and what is employment first. So we started doing that last time. Now we're going to talk about the vehicle that you'll use to move yourselves forward. I use this vehicle a lot. So this says, it is what it is, but it will become what you make it. And this really resonates with me because that's what we're here to do. We're here to do something that'll become what we make it. A lot of us have been in our jobs for a while. We've been fighting systems for a while. We have people that we know and love and care about that are asking for a different life and a different opportunity. And we want to create some of that opportunity for people to be their best self and to get some work, right? So whenever you're going to implement a change or a project, and I know a lot of you do this in your regular work every day, and you probably can teach this as well as I can, and you know, and these are 4 characteristics. I like to think of it like a gear, and if one of the gears is off, it all stops and stops working. So you really have to have a very clear vision to change, right? So it could be, you know, like, oh, I'd really be interested in having some nice plants in my front of my house. But, you know, when you're tired at night and you don't feel like going out and planting, I mean, it's not like critical, but you really need it to be critical. To get the energy behind change, you really need there to be a reason for that change. You need a sense of urgency because that's how people buy in. People will buy in if it's like, I haven't worked in 3 years, right? That's a little bit that sense of urgency. And our system has got 9,000 people on the waiting list, right? That sense of urgency is really important. The third characteristic you need is you need a process to guide you through that change. You need that vehicle that's going to guide you through the change. And then ultimately, you need some strong leadership. And leadership, remember, doesn't come with a title. So just because you do or don't have a title does not necessarily mean that you're going to be successful. If you have these other things and you have strong leadership, it can come with influence. It doesn't have to always come with title. I did put down some resources here that you can take a look at. This is going to be yours at the end of the day. I really like the Dare to Lead, anything by Brene Brown. I know that she's kind of pop psychology these days, but I think she's got some good lessons about leadership. I love Leadership Jazz is another book. Dupree is the author, and pretty much anything he does is great. And then I also like anything by Lencioni. Those are all great leadership books. So if you're looking for some good leadership reading, I think every one of these is pretty easy to read. They're enjoyable reading. The stuff by Dupree, the Leadership Jazz, and the things that he's done, pretty skinny. Same with the Lencioni stuff. There is a couple big Lencioni books, but the smaller ones are good. And these are the things you have to have. You have to have these. And so that's when we're picking our projects and we're picking our vision, we want to have, we're not going to change an entire system. You got to have some urgency behind it. Ultimately, you might change the system, but right now we're going to start small and it's got to be something that's urgent. Okay, so for this meeting, we're going to understand the change process. We're going to share that process. And then we're going to start talking about our project goal, and then we're going to prepare for the next step. And I'm going to give you some of those tools. And please stop us or ask questions. Oop, there is some people in the chat. All right. Thank you. Okay. So let's go through each of those things that I just talked about. So the reason to change. Really, people only change for 2 reasons. They change because there's a crisis, or they change because there is an opportunity. And I'll tell you something funny. I was just talking about the North Carolina DD Council when they did this great training about 15 years ago. And they brought in all of these people who had changed their organizations, and it might have been 20 years ago, but they brought in all these people that were had changed their organizations and had changed them for 15 years. And so we had Lyle Romer, and we had Jeff Strawley, and we had Pat Frangelo, and really some really great people. And this is something that I heard over and over and over again from them is, we changed because we were in crisis. And the crisis in some situations was that we were in a fiscal crisis. Some, they were in a quality crisis. They were embarrassed about what their organization was doing. And some because they were in a policy crisis. And I think that the reason why this thing was happening in North Carolina at the time was they had a policy that said they needed to shut down their center-based programs, and that was the crisis. So that's, what is the crisis? The other reason people change is because there's opportunity. So either, we're going to get bigger and stronger, and we've got this opportunity, or we're going to go to a new geographic area or add a new demographic. Like maybe we've never worked with vets before, but now we're going to work with vets. So those are kind of the reasons why people change. So really, to hope that resonates with you and you can think about why it is that you want what you want. Okay. So the urgency. So whatever you're experiencing and that you want to change has got to be because you got to get away from what it is that is not working right now, or it's fiscally not working, it's quality not working, or whatever it is, it's just not working, right? So that sense of urgency has got to be there. There's got to be this mini crisis that's going to happen, and it needs to happen now. I've got a priority list. I mean, everybody on this call has a priority list. Every one of us has more things that we need to do than we have time to do them with. So what gets to the top? This thing, whatever we're going to change, needs to get to the top, and you need some time. And you need some time to let that resonate. This is the change process that we're going to employ. I really love this. I use it with our organization. I use it in my consulting. I use it in my home life with my family, just to make sure that you don't skip a step. So often what happens when we want to implement a change, we say, okay, let's build this bridge, right? And you never actually look to see if that bridge needed to be built. Maybe there was already a bridge that was a mile down, and what you really needed was a taxi service to get to that bridge. So it's really important that you gather that information up front, and that you really understand that and break that down. Then we got to set a goal for the project, and the goal for the project should fit into your organizational goals. So on this call, we have, I did this little check yesterday. In this group, we've got 5 SILs, we've got 6 P&As, we have 2 DD councils and 2 USEDs. Actually, I think there's 3 DD councils because I think North Carolina, you're on with the another group, and you didn't get counted separately, but you're on as a team, which is great. And so I know that you all have very, very strong missions in your organization. So how does this piece fit into the mission of the organization, right? So our organization is, we support people to live, work, and thrive as a part of their life of their choosing. They take some personal responsibility for it, and we'll support them to do that. And so we're not going to do something outside of that vision. Our project isn't going to be outside of that vision. It's going to be inside of that vision. So how does your project goal fit into your bigger organizational goal? And I think when we started to ask the why, we were looking at some of the bigger visions under the why. And now we're going to try to bring it in a little bit closer, okay? Then we got to create the plan. How are we going to do it? I love a pilot. A lot of people have gotten away from pilots. I think piloting is pretty much the only way that you can actually move forward, because you don't want to be making mistakes on a big scale. You want to learn those things on a smaller scale, right? And then we're going to track the process and communicate. And it's always kind of the last thinking of everybody, but communicate, means that you don't need to work as hard to bring stakeholders across. I'm sorry, and I missed that. Bring your stakeholders along. And we're gonna work through this in a few minutes here. So here's a chart that has some of these things, and on the right-hand side are some of the tools. And you'll see that there's some links to some tools, and it's pretty much the same thing I just showed you, but it's got a little bit more tools. And that's one of the things we'll be giving you along the way, are those tools, to make sure that you've got everything you need to be able to advance the project that you're working on. So how do you write that goal? I know that we've all seen this. A SMART goal is really important. The piece that's not as much in here that I really want to focus on is, we want it specific, we want it measurable, we want it actionable, realistic, and time bound. One of the things that's really important at this point is you do not want to put in your goal, you do not want to put how you're going to do it. Because you want to use the planning process, you want to use the gathering information process, you want to use the stakeholder involvement to help you to decide your methodology. You may think you already know the right methodology, and you might be spot on. That may be right exactly where you land, but it also might not be where you land. When you get more ideas and more cooks in the kitchen, you might come up with a much better product. So use that time. So I like this. I think it's a nice visual, and we're going to go through later a little bit more on some of those, a sample that I'm going to give you, and then we're going to work with each other's and give each other some feedback on our own goals that we're working on. So stakeholders, that's a really interesting one, because you all are, not everybody, but most of you have more than one person on this call right now. And yes, you are the leaders of this project, but you might want to expand that a little bit. And it's really important, and I'm going to give you a table that I use when I choose the stakeholders that I'm going to work with. But when I think about who the stakeholders are and how we bring those stakeholders along, you want people who are influential and who are interested. And when I say influential, again, I don't mean a job. I don't mean somebody with a job title. If there's somebody that's in your community or in your organization or in your state that is influential because, they're going to go and chain themselves to a tree when they have to get a point across, they're influential. If there's somebody who is well connected because their family is in a political position where, or they are in a political position where other people are really want to listen to them and they're compelling, they're influential. And so influential, you want people that are your stakeholders to help you along this process that are influential. They can help you to make the kind of changes and help you to make the kind of steps. It may mean CEO, it may mean executive director, it may mean president of your council or of your board of directors. It may mean that person. And then the other piece is interested. And so you want to have this combination of people that have kind of a high interest. If you look at the bottom corner, you can see that really, and you know who I'm talking about, those meetings that you go in and people sit there and they don't ever give any input. And it's a collaborative meeting and you're trying to get input from people and this person never gives any input. That person isn't necessarily going to be value added. You want people who are going to be value added, that are going to help you. They're going to be the people who lead the charge, or they're going to be people that are going to do some of the behind the scenes work. But you want people who are going to be able to really impact the change that you're trying to change. We're going to create the plan. I'm going to talk to you for a second about this DICE framework. Has anybody ever used it? By show of hands, face, if you've done it, put it in the chat if you've ever used the DICE framework. I love this framework for doing projects. I think that there's a link to this, and I'll make sure if anybody wants to spend more time on this, we can do that. But it is It's where you take a look at a project and you say, you give it a numeric value, and you say, how long is this going to take? How long is this project going to take? And really 2 to 3 months is the sweet spot, and you get points. There's a point value. It comes from the Boston Consulting Group, and you literally can just Google Boston Consulting Group DICE, and it'll come up. They've got their own Wikipedia page. You ought to take a couple of current things that you're working on and run it against this just to see how it fares. So maybe look at your strategic plan, because I know every one of you have to have strategic plans and state plans for your work, and run it against this DICE just to see how this model works. I will tell you, I use this in everything I do. And sometimes I actually write it down and use this, and sometimes I just do it in my head. I think, okay, 2 to 3 months, that's about right. What's the integrity of the project, right? Is it like so far-fetched, or is there some integrity to this project? We know it's going to work. It's research-based. It's happened in other places. It has a lot of significance to people. Commitment. This is a really interesting one. There's actually 2 values in commitment, and the first is top management committed. And I was saying I just kind of did some of this presentation with the folks from Source America, and one of the things that they came back and said is, we're a small department. The Competitive Integrated Employment Group is a small department in some of these Source America providers, and they feel like top management isn't committed to what we're trying to do, or we're trying to get ourselves to be a place where they're more committed to it. So that's really important. Is that level of commitment. And then the people who this is going to actually impact, and it says here affected employees, but really it's not only affected employees, it's also advocates, job seekers, right? So if job seekers in your geographic area, if transitioning youth in your geographic area, they don't really care about this, you want them to care about it, but they don't really care about it, then what you need to do is you need to go out front and get them to care about it first before you invest in the project. And so that's a really important step that we sometimes forget about, is that whoever it is that this is going to impact, they need to care about it. They need to be committed to making it happen. And I'll tell you a story. I was doing some work for a state that I'll say is nameless, and we were working to help them to do employment first and to bring customized employment and competitive integrated employment to the state. And one of the things that I was told was, you need to watch out, because the people who run the sheltered workshops in the state, they're going to fight you all the way, and they're going to go to the governor, and then you're not going to be able to come back again. And I said, okay, let's stop. Let's not do the strategic plan. Let's not do the state strategic plan. Let's stop and let's go visit those people. Let's let them be heard. Let's let them. And it took an extra year for us to get that strategic plan done. But when we did, it was more effective, because we had input even from the people who we knew were going to be against it. So sometimes when you are working on a project, you may actually need to stop the project and get the buy-in that you need by bringing people along, either as stakeholders or in some other way. Having them meet people, showing them videos, doing some training, sitting down with them in their living room, right? So if you have people who are gonna stop you from doing this, so you really do need the people who are affected by this. It's been great advice for people shutting down sheltered workshops, that they meet with the families who they're most worried about, to be able to get some buy-in from them. Seth, do you have anything to add to that? You've probably done a ton of work with people who don't have buy-in.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, Karen, this is probably the magic ingredient in terms of change work, and that even when people say they're bought in, I think there needs to be regular and frequent engagement. Sometimes we start there where people say, yes, I'm in, and then decisions have to get made for your project, and those folks are in a position of influence or authority, and making sure that you're continually building a relationship on an ongoing basis with people when you get to the point of hard decisions needing to be made, or those that are political. You all know this in your advocacy work.
Yeah.
Employment, it shows up over and over and over again. And I think we just can't be discouraged when things don't align, where someone said they were committed and then maybe their decision doesn't show that they're committed. I think we can't stop there. We just keep coming back. Same in the advocacy world, right? So employment's no different that way, but I just don't underestimate the power of those ongoing commitment to building the relationship, because some of these decisions are really tough and they are big changes.
Yeah. The other thing that you can do is you can make the project small enough so that that's one way to bring people along with their commitments. Maybe show something small that's happened, and then try to continue to get the commitment bigger and bigger and bigger.
I
It's
think
really important.
one other thing I'd say, Karen, is that I'd echo what you're saying there, is that you can shrink things down, and also think about there's no reason why we shouldn't say yes to something, right? If you can go, this makes sense, it doesn't take money, it's not gonna take away from others. Those, try and grab those kinds of things, because it just sometimes it's tidiness and precedent and things that we just need to undo and get more organized for ourselves. Those things move the needle too.
Yeah, great. And finally, effort. And this is a really important, is y'all have full-time jobs doing other things. We come into your life for about 3 months. If your project is going to take, a 50% of your time, and you don't have 50% of your time to give, do not do a project that takes 50% of your time. And you want to be clear with people when you invite them along with you, is how long it is that you're going to need them. I'm going to need 2 hours every other week for a meeting with you, and then I'm going to ask you to do about an hour of work a month beyond that 2 hours that we meet, right? So you're clear on yourself what you have the bandwidth to do, and then you're clear with the people that you're asking to be with you on the bandwidth. So that's the DICE framework. So as I said, I'd recommend that you take this DICE framework, and you can Google it or look it up on Wikipedia. It's got a really super great, and there's some articles on the Harvard Business Review about it as well. Pretty easily understood, and run it against a couple projects you currently have to see, it'll help you. And then once your brain kind of starts thinking that way, that's what happened with me, is now I say to people, that's a pretty big project, or, it seems like you've got the plans made before you even brought the stakeholders along. Maybe you want to take a step back and get the stakeholders involved and see what they think, or that data doesn't really support what it is you're trying to do. And so using this framework has really helped me to ensure. One of the biggest problems that I see in systems change work that I do, and I don't know, Seth, if you see this as well, is false starts. When we make these grand promises about this great big change we're going to make, and we get out of the blocks and we don't do these steps correctly, and then they fail, and the next time we ask people to buy in, or the next time we ask them to be on the committee, they're like, yeah, I don't really have time for that. I'm a little busy right now. And so you have to be really careful to make sure that what you do, you are successful at, and so that it's got to be manageable. It's got to be the right amount of time. You got to have the right buy-in, because you want to be successful. Too many false starts out, and people won't trust you to do these things anymore. So, okay, so that's the create the plan. The next is to collect the data. So, man, there's already so much data out there, and there's ways for us to get the data. There's, in the IDD world, there's data in the state data system. There's state data in the national core indicators. There's a lot of ways to collect data already out there. There's maybe funding data that you can collect. So you don't ever want to collect data that is so arduous that you're not going to get out of the blocks. You want it to be small enough, but you really do need to have some data markers in what you're trying to do. And I'll share with you this process as we go forward. One of the biggest mistakes, I was in Maryland, I was a public policy fellow on loan to the state, working with their DDA agency, and we've got this fabulous data system. I mean, you can't believe this data system. And people were actually doing the data. It was the employment data. And I got there and it had been collected for 3 years. And I said, well, what does this data mean? I mean, what is this? People went, I don't think I've ever really seen that data. What does that mean? And I got the raw data so I could play with it. We were working with ICI in Massachusetts, and we got some fabulous, fabulous data. It was really wonderful. And so when it came time, and I think this is a really important piece of this puzzle, is we had a legislation to shut down our sheltered workshops in Maryland. And DDA was trying to decide with the Department of Labor whether they were going to support this or not. And the DDA person who was the legislative representative for DDA said, let's ask for a study. Do you all know that trick that state people do? Let's study that. Let's study that for a year. Let's study that for 2 years. Then they can put it off, right? And that's what they said. Let's study it. And I said, oh, I happen to have the data for you. They said, well, how many people are currently in sheltered workshops? Oh, I can tell you this. There are 2,300 people who are in sheltered workshops. They're in there for an average of 4 hours a week. They make 13 cents and $13.22 every 2 weeks. I had all that data ready for them. Nobody had ever looked at the data. It was sitting there and nobody had ever looked at the data or analyzed it. Data can be incredibly powerful. So we want to be taking data on our projects so that we can show, yes, we've succeeded. Here's what we need to change. So that's a really critical step, is the data step. Analyzing that data, as a part of your project, who's going to collect it, who's going to analyze it, what are you going to do with the information? That is so important. That is absolutely critical, both in the piloting phase as well as in the implementation. Okay, and then communicate out the findings. So now I'm going to give you a practice. So when I looked at how many people were on, P&A's one. I might be wrong about your intention, but I'm going to walk you through one of these projects as if I were a P&A. Okay. So the agency vision is, in my state, people with disabilities that want to work get the support they need to successfully work. So that's kind of the as if I were the P&A, this would be my organizational vision, right? I'm going to do some research, and here's what I need to find before I decide what it is I'm going to do, exactly what I want to change, because I need to have some markers for what I'm going to change. What's the current state numbers for people in CIE? How many people are actually in competitive integrated employment? How many providers are licensed to do it and actually doing it, getting paid to do it? Pretty easy to find from the state. You can get that from the state. What policies are in place that prioritize CIE? Is there an employment first policy? Is there a legislation? Is it in my We All Work plan? Where is competitive integrated employment mentioned that it's supposed to be a priority in how we spend our money in our state? Is rehab following what they're supposed to do for WIOA requirements? I want to find out a little bit more. So I'm going to do just some research to really be able to hone in my vision and where I'm going. So here's what I found in my pretend state, that our employment first policy has actually lapsed. We had a policy and it was and there is a state I have worked with that is currently, they just had their policy lapse because they kind of got done. There are 3 things they were supposed to do, but now there's no policy anymore. So the policy's not there and the team doesn't meet anymore. Why should the team meet? There's no policy, right? And when I looked at our employment first numbers or our CIE numbers, what I found is we were at about 22% and we're at about 22%. That's about what we're at. So we're not really growing. We're not really moving in that direction. We're not building capacity. More people aren't getting the opportunity. We've got more people on the waiting list, right? We're backfilling. Okay. So this is what my findings say. So I look at this and I think, we need to get that policy back up. Now, remember, I'm doing this from the perspective of the P&A. So in our state, in Maryland, the P&A helps with policy development on some of this. So the overall goal is that as a part of their state plan is that there's employment first policy is going to be legislated by 2023, because we are not going to go through this process again of having this policy lapse. We're going to get this in legislation. We need it written down. We got buy-in. We've got people saying, yep, we're on board. We want this to happen by 2023. You and I are not going to be together by 2023, but you got to take a first step towards this. So what we're going to do as our first step, as our team, is an employment first group that reflects the diverse stakeholders will hold its first meeting by December 1st. Okay, so it's got a time frame. It's got it's clear what it is that we're going to do. It's reasonable, right? We're not way far out. It's bringing together, it does not saying how I'm bringing them together, but it's kind of who's going to be there, because this is a step along the way to get that legislation passed. I need to get those stakeholders involved so that we can get this done along the way. That's the first step of my project. Now, here's the people who are going to be on my steering committee. This is not the members of the Employment First group. Don't get confused. This is not but these are the steering committee. These are the people who are going to help me make that goal happen. These are the people who I want to be with me as I go towards there. I want a job seeker, either from a self-advocacy organization or a SIL. I want somebody from the VR or the IDD organization to be on. Now, I'm not using names. Don't use names when you start. You just want to, what are the characteristics of the people? Who's going to be on your support committee or your steering committee, your stakeholder committee? You want an employment provider, right? Because they're pretty influential and they're going to want to do this. You want one of your AOD partners. So maybe we're going to have somebody from the DD Council, or maybe even somebody from both the DD Council and from as you said, maybe I'll have them both on, and then me, the leader. We're just a steering committee that's going to get us to this point. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, okay, now who are the candidates? Who's a job seeker that is somebody who is from a SIL that's got some influence and is good. I might not know who that is, but I might go to other people that are a part of my group and ask who that is. Who's the VR person or the IDD person or behavioral health person who I think can really help us? And I might not know who those people are, so I might ask for some help. So this is for my steering committee. Okay. So in my project, I've got this. I know who I'm going to have on. I'm going to bring them along. And then I'm going to create the plan. And here is basically my plan. I'm going to identify the people. And by the way, my steering committee has already met. You're not responsible to create the plan without your steering committee. But I'm just going to pretend that my steering committee helped me because I wanted you to see this step. So the steering committee has come up with these steps to get us to the end, to get us to that face-to-face meeting. So we're going to identify people to be on the steering committee. That's something I'm doing. Then we have to have an agenda for that steering committee, and it's got to be a big boom right away, because I really want people to buy into what it is that we're doing. Then the steering committee is going to create this vision for our employment first group, because we want this employment first group to be powerful and influential and skilled and all of that, right? Then the steering committee is going to do FAQs, because if I come to Sherry and I say, Sherry, I want you to be on the State Employment First group, and we're going to do these things, you're going to go, how much time is it going to take me? And how long do you want me to be on the group? And is my boss going to get mad at me? And am I going to get fired if I'm on this group? And you've got questions that you want to answer. So we're going to do, to make it easier so that all of us have the same tool, we're going to create a FAQ of frequently asked questions. Maybe, do we have an employment first policy? Are we going to try to get legislation, or do we just want to have it in our work plan? How do we want to do this? Those things can be in the FAQs, because then it kind of forces the steering committee to think through some of these things before we move on. They should identify who's represented. So now we're going to start talking about who should be on the steering committee. Who do we think should be a part of the steering committee? And then we're going to start asking, or excuse me, the statewide committee. And then we're going to ask people to be on the committee. We're going to actually do the asks. And then once we do the asks, we're going to say our first meeting is December 1st. Here's our agenda, and here's what we're going to do. Okay. So that's my plan. Okay. So when I think about piloting, because I remember I said I love piloting, I think piloting is the right way to go. What are some things that I could pilot? So in that process, maybe I'd pilot a Q&A sheet. Maybe I'd do it and then I'd go show it to Kate and say, Kate, we're going to start asking people to be on this. We're going to ask people to be on this committee, on this statewide committee. Take a look at the Q&A sheet and tell me what you think. Is this going to answer the questions you think people will want to know? So you might want to bring it out there to a couple people. That's a pilot. You might want to practice that ask. You might want to practice, okay, we're going to go ask Amy to be on it. So let's practice first with Serena and see what she thinks, if our delivery of this is good, because she might help us. You also might want to pilot or do a survey to see who thinks this group is a good idea, who thinks that employment first is an employment first policy is a good idea, who even knew that the employment first policy that we had in place went away. So there's kind of multiple things that you possibly could pilot here. Okay. So then when we're done, we're going to collect this data, and here's the data that I want to collect along the way. Does it represent, because remember, go back to my vision, does it represent diverse interested parties, right? So is there a legislator on? Because we're certainly going to need somebody, right? Is there a family member who says, I don't really want my kid to be out of a sheltered workshop? Are they going to be there represented? Is there somebody who's a job seeker who will be impacted by this policy? So you really want to look at that and mark yes or no, right? Is that done? Another piece of data that you might want to collect is varying levels of influence. So there might be somebody who's, can make one phone call and everybody gets, and they can get anybody to do anything, but there's somebody else whose influence maybe not so big, but they're really interested, they're really passionate, they might turn out to be a great worker bee. We got to set a deadline. The Q&A's got to be done by the 15th, so that if the Q&A is done by October 15th, I can make my asks by between October 15th and November 15th. November 30th, the group will meet, we're done, right? So you want to make sure that you're making it along the way so that you can communicate out. We're excited to announce that we've been working on this. We're excited to announce that we have this. This is when the first meeting is. This is what the goal is of the group. So let's go back to your original why statements. And if you could take those back out again and look at them and ask yourself, is it compelling? Is there a sense of urgency with it? Is this change really needed? Is what it is that you're asking to do, is it really needed? Or is it just something that you did a master's thesis on and you think it's a great idea and you really want to implement it? Or is there some compelling reason? And is there some leadership behind it? So I want to back up and say, if the answer is no to any of these, it doesn't mean you need to scrap your plan. It doesn't mean you need to scrap what it is you're trying to do. It may mean that we need to reword it. It may mean that we need to change the scope of it. It may mean that we bring some other people on to get their opinions of this. So then the next question is, each of you represent an organization. What is the current goal in your organization about increasing competitive integrated employment? What is the current organizational goal? Does your organization have that goal? That kind of was, I saw some of those really big goals back when we were looking to a meeting or two ago, when we started to really look at the vision or the why statement. Those are pretty big. How do we bring that, what is the organizational goal for what you're trying to do, so that you can cut off a piece of that, and that's what your project goal will be. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do so that we can work together on this. I don't really have a great way to do this. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to put in the chat this link. And when I put this in there, this is going to take you to an app called Mural. And we have our own page on Mural. So if you just click on that, it should take you to the Mural page. And I can see as you join, and I'm going to walk through. And so in the Mural page, I can share my screen. Let me share my screen. That makes sense.
Yeah, because we still need to grab the link.
Yeah. Did it go in or not?
No.
Oh, because probably what I did is I put it in the chat and then I didn't push send.
I know, I do that all the time.
Because it's right there.
Enter.
Oh no, I sent it to Amy Gonzalez only. There you go, Amy. You got it. Nobody else did. Okay. Everyone. Sorry about that.
Right.
Okay. Is it there now?
Got it.
Perfect. So it'll take you to this view. And this is pretty easy. See all these people down here, all these animals. You're all, oh, look at that. Yeah, there's somebody they're visiting Ladybug. That's how we go into these. So this link right here where it says text will give you a sticky note. And you can get a 3x3 sticky note, a 5x3 sticky note, or a circle note. So take a 5x3 sticky note and pull it out here. And then you can type what it is your project objective is going to be. So we're going to take your project objective, and we're going to put it on so that we can look at them together, and we'll have this to start working on. So you want to take one of your sticky notes and move it on over, and maybe put just your organization at the top, and let's put down what your project objective is going to be. Remember, we want it to be short. We want it to be time boxed. And if you want to just put down, oh, look at that. The DD Council, that is really big. Okay, so let's make that bigger. Can you make that bigger so we can see that? I think you can grab a corner of it. Okay, so that's the organizational mission. That can't be your project mission. It's way too big. That's your state plan mission. So what I want is your project mission. So you've got the big organizational mission, which is great. I love it, especially because I'm a DC provider. How how are you going to use the next 2 or 3 months? What is the step that you're going to do in the next 2 or 3 months? So Allison, do you mind if we take you as a, and talk through some of this?
Sure.
Okay. So what is it, the project that you were thinking that you would do in the next 2 or 3 months to get us closer to this?
So 2022 is the 10-year anniversary of Employment First in DC, or of the Employment First Declaration. And so we basically want to convene a summit that reflects on what has happened over the last 10 years and looks to the future about goal setting. But the summit, I'm sort of anticipating like we need a year of planning. So over the next few months, the main goal is to identify who needs to be involved in the planning and do some like beginning of the planning, but we're not thinking we will have the summit within the next 5 months. It's to start the process.
Perfect. I love it. That is so clear. So exactly what you said, and what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to give you this tool that we've, the planning tool, that you can not only do just your first step, which we'll talk about, but then when you're done with your first step, you can replicate it and do the second step, and then you can do the third step. And maybe what would you see as the first step? You kind of said it. It's about gathering the right people to be on a committee.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So if the first step is establishing a employment summit committee, by what date?
October 31st, probably.
Okay. You think you can do it by then? Remember the time frame. How much time do you have to devote to this? Because you're going to want to do it right. You're going to want to bring other people on to get their opinions, and might only be 1 or 2 meetings, but you think you could do it? I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. So maybe what your goal would be, your program goal or your project goal would be, is something like create a DC employment first summit strategic team by October, that will meet by October 31st.
Yes.
Okay. That's great. Okay, so yep, perfect. That's exactly right. Seth, you on board? Right, looks good. Okay, so that's what we want to do here, is that we want to get you, everybody see that? We'll do a couple more together. We'll do a couple more together right now. Anybody else want to raise their hand and have us do this? Okay, Sherry said it's not letting her pull a note, and I don't know why. Because we should be able to have like at least 50 on here. Okay. Who else would be willing to let us give it a try? Walk them through theirs. You can unmute yourself and just say if you'd be willing to let us do it. Come on. Can we do North Carolina DD Council? Oh, where'd it go?
No, that was one I was going to vote for too. That North Carolina DD Council up there.
I was trying to edit it and it went away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can talk about it and then
Okay.
try to put it back.
Yeah.
So,
Grab another note and let's try.
Okay.
I wonder. it's somewhere else.
With what you were saying before, I was going to edit my vision statement. And what we're doing now, or what the Financial Asset Development Committee is doing, my goal is to, I don't even know where I am anymore. Okay. To create or start the development of a initiative that would be focused on competitive integrated employment.
Talk through that a little bit more. Let me hear some more about that.
So we are in a we are about to start a phase where we have some money that can be dedicated to a multi-year initiative related to financial asset development for folks in North Carolina with developmental disabilities. So as the administrator for this committee, my job would be to start the process of presenting an idea to the committee, to our council, to consider for funding.
Okay, so you would fund somebody else.
Correct. I'm working on developing and doing the background information to start an RFP or an RFA.
That's great.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Do you have a committee that generally supports you on creating these RFPs?
I'm new to the council. I will say yes. So we have brainstorming time during our council meetings. So that's why I was going to set the goal date for November 4th, which will be our next time that the committee will get together.
Okay. And so what you're hoping to do is to create your kind of the ultimate RFP here is that the council will fund a multi-year initiative on financial asset management. That's the organizational goal, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Great. And what you need to do is create an RFP that targets the council's priorities around financial asset management.
T's around right, financial asset development.
Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay.
That's what. And or create an idea to bring to the council.
Okay. So at this point, we don't even need to have the RFP done. At this point, you really just need to have the framework.
Right.
For, okay, great. Framework for an idea that could be funded. Great.
Right.
That's a great one. Anybody else, any comments on that? Oh, some of you have probably done this exact same thing. Okay, that sounds good. Does that sound good across the board? Getting an idea of how to write these? Okay, so Linda, which one are you?
I'm the pinkish one to the right of the DCDDC.
The Yukon, you said Yukon?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it says we'll convene a community conversation involving support staff, business leaders, policymakers, and people with disabilities who work or want to work to identify strategies for the USAID's dissemination of information about the, oh, this is a big mouthful, right? About the urgency, knowledge, and competence needed to significantly increase the number of people. Okay, so in plain language, what are you thinking that you need to do?
I think we need to get together a group of stakeholders across the board, people who provide services and who receive supports, and people who control employment in Connecticut, and actually have a conversation that's an interagency conversation about why this is so important, because right now there's no central distributor of information, and as you mostly know, we've got lots of silos and no coordination. And we've already developed a curriculum, for example. I know what it is. We're doing adulting series for adolescents and young adults around this, and what are they going to run into? They're going to run into, sorry, we don't do that, or yeah, we've got a waiting list.
So is your curriculum for the staff, or is your curriculum for people with disabilities who are of working age?
We have both. We have a mini curriculum. I mean, it's basically a session for adolescents and young adults who about working and why you should work. And then we have a full curriculum that we developed around customized employment that was supposed to be used by our Department of Education, our Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, and the Department of Developmental Services. And it was supposed to be refined by our regional education service centers. And as far as I know, it's still gathering dust in somebody's computer.
Okay.
And it's a pretty extensive curriculum. It's got multiple levels of competencies, skills, knowledge, skills, etc. And it's like it's been sat on since 2019, 2018, 2018, I think. I don't remember. Sorry, my years are messed up.
Coming together these days, right?
So it's been sat on and nobody's used it, and a lot of effort went into it. It was funded by our DD Council, and it's applicable to all competitive integrated employment except for some sections that are unique to, I would call it customizing employment, because I think people need to get their head wrapped around how features of customized employment apply to individuals. We also have a curriculum for parents. We have a toolkit that we haven't exactly published yet, but it's a process. So, okay, we've got this stuff. How do we get the urgency out there? I think we need to get partners, and so I'm talking way more plain language than I meant to.
Yeah.
But I want to get partners to say, we have this information. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe you want to tweak it. Maybe that's one of the strategies. We have to go back to the drawing board. But how do we get this out there so that we're all on the same page?
Yeah. So let's think about that urgency for a second, right? And going back to this required, just because you have a really good curriculum doesn't mean that anybody wants to or needs to use it, right?
Yep.
So how do we make sure that if you have a really good curriculum that's been paid, that it actually gets used?
Well, theoretically, it would take years to pull together strategies and, go through this whole process like it did with our early childhood professional development.
What if we put it in policy?
But I think ultimately it's if enough constituencies can come to agreement about the urgency and what has to happen in order to significantly increase the number of people who have customized integrated employment, then it could be brought to policymakers for action, like BRS, DDS, Department of Labor, et cetera, shall work together.
Do you have any data about the staff that took it got 3 jobs for people, and the staff that didn't take it got 0 jobs for people? Do you have
We don't
any
collect that
efficacy
kind of
data?
data, and maybe that's what we need to be looking at, is ways to collect data, because we don't have any decent data.
So if somebody takes your training, how do I know if it's effective?
Well, I think the baseline is to actually get a count of, you know, who is DDS supporting in competitive integrated employment, who has BRS placed in competitive integrated employment, and the individual is satisfied with it. It's not just a let's cross this person's name off the list placement. How do we get the Department of Labor to step up to the plate and have, you know, the AJCs to be able to recognize that reasonable accommodations are required by law, and you know, you can't just send somebody away because.
But you're now back up in the moon. Let's get back down to your project.
Yep.
Your project is, I've got 3 curriculums, and I want to get these 3 curriculums on the street, correct?
Yep.
Right. So let's not worry about all that other stuff. Let's stay close to what your project is, right?
Mhm.
So have you piloted a training with these curriculums?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any data about the efficacy, not the satisfaction, but the actual efficacy? Once the staff took this training, they were able to get this many jobs for people. That's not about the state DDA data. That's about your data, follow along data for people who took the curriculum.
Right. People who have taken the Mark Golden Associates version of our curriculum, of which there were some 100 and something people, managed to place 26 individuals as a result of 3 years of intensive 6 cohorts of training. I think it was 3, I don't know. Don't ask me numbers today. I can't focus on numbers, but there were several cohorts that went through the training. They had follow-up from the DD Council. They had follow-up from me. They had technical assistance to implement this stuff, and they managed to place 26 people over the course of the following year, which is BS. There's no reason they couldn't have placed a lot more.
Yeah. So I would say you want to start much smaller, right? You would want to start much smaller. That maybe there is something wrong with the curriculum, right? I mean, you don't know that, because was there we can't always assume that it was something wrong with the person who received it. It might have been, so let's make it smaller so we can figure that out.
Well, I know what's the issue is that we can't get our heads out of body parts that allow us to think about things in a different way, including interagency collaboration. I know that's the problem. So when you have people who want to do more competitive integrated employment, we don't have the waiver categories that allow them to do that. So when I worked I consulted to a private agency for 6 years, we ended up not getting paid for a full year because we thought, when we're working one-to-one with somebody, the case managers told us it was okay. We were billing at an individual day support rate. And that when we were dealing with a group of people, like we had 3 people going out for different reasons to do a walkthrough of a business, that was then a group rate, and that was fine. We didn't get paid because DDS didn't have a policy that allowed you to bill more than one category for an individual. And then when they did put the policy in place, it was group supported only, and you can't do individual work on a group supported reimbursement rate. So
how do we get back to what the project is that you want to do in 3 months?
What I want to do is I want to get people to say, we can do this, and here is what we need to do to change to get it done. It's not going to happen because the agencies say, oh, I got an idea, let's do it. We've already tried, been there, done that. But how do we get, I guess, more of a groundswell of grassroots support from businesses that are saying, you know, we've got help wanted signs all over the state. Why isn't it? And you're telling us people with disabilities don't have work. Why aren't they applying? I want people with disabilities to say, I can work, I've been working, why can't this person? Or saying, I want to work, but nobody's assisting me in alternative ways of applying, et cetera. They just send me out on my own and I fail all the time. So I think the groundswell, what I guess I'm trying to do is whoop up the troops so that we're not looking to the administrators and the systems to make the change, but to get grassroots activities that push the change forward.
Okay, I want Seth to weigh in here, but let me just say something real quick. Exactly what we're doing right now and how we're talking this through with Linda is how you get to the next step. So it may seem like she's got these pie in the sky ideas, and I think they're great because competitive integrated employment is important. It's pie in the sky. She wants everybody to sing kumbaya together and advocacy to happen and the state to pay for everything it has to be, but we have to start somewhere. And I think that's how we move off this mark, is that we keep bringing it from this pie in the sky to smaller, to smaller, to smaller, to smaller, and we take that first step. And so I don't want people to feel like, you know, that this is not this is a really valuable conversation, because we all have, and if you go back and look at Allison's great big beautiful DC mission, it was a great big beautiful mission, and now we've got it down to a step. So how do we get your great big beautiful missions of everybody works that wants to work and they all get the right support and the providers get paid and the staff are highly skilled? How do we get that down to something measurable as a first step so people believe in us so we can then take the second step? Sass, you want to give us a hand?
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, just echo a little bit and say, Linda's really good at describing all of the things that you're all going to be dealing with, because that's not an unfamiliar story, right? In terms of all the areas you could poke at this. But I would say, Linda, my advice would be, what, from your perspective, given all of that you know, I also like to suggest to people, pick the lane that you're the most passionate about right now. And you've said grassroots, you've said people with disabilities, you said employers. It's like, when I say that, what comes up for you to say, you know what, for the next 3 months, I'm going to focus on which lane?
Families.
Okay.
Families, because I've had the greatest success saying to families, don't sit around and wait for DDS or BRS or anybody else to do it. Use your personal connections. Here's the strategies you use. And so now they've been written up, not published yet, but they've been written up. And that's the group that I think can really get people employed. I mean, I'm sick of our state.
Yeah, no,
This is what's said here stays here, right?
Sure,
I am so sick of trying to impact our state agencies. I think families, if their families want their family members employed, they've got to do it themselves.
Yeah. So I think that's where you dig in right here, is that you say, what can you do with families or for families in the next 90 days that's going to get them armed up to have a voice?
Okay.
And you go, okay, these are the things. Leave the training part aside, leave the policy side, and go, okay, advocacy. Right? This is an advocacy lane. You have resources and information. How does it go from you being able to articulate it to them owning it? What's the way that you get there between, in the next 90 days?
Okay.
You don't have to answer that right now, but I think that's where you really start to go, I'm going to do these 3 things.
So care to cut a rewrite for me here that articulates what you're saying? Feel free.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as, I want to have 5 families identified, 3 to 5 families identified that are interested in finding their voice around advocating for competitive integrated employment, and convening them to say, what does it take?
Yeah. Beautiful.
To do this?
Yep.
It's like, you build your believers, I guess would be the name of the project, right? These are the people that are willing to go fight for this. And it really only takes one really stellar one of those sometimes to get that gasoline gathered up.
Right. So I would say, you know, by November 1st, there will be a group of families gathered together that will gather, that are all interested in helping their sons and daughters get work. Right? It's time boxed, it's specific, it's right. And then now you start to work through that process. Now you got that vision. And I would not start with getting your families together, but when I talked about bringing the stakeholders, who's going to be your steering committee that identifies these families and gets them together? So using that same example that I used with the P&A, so you want this little steering committee that maybe is 3 to 5 people that can help you in this process to get to that goal of bringing this group of 5 families together by November 1st that are excited about getting their sons or want to learn more about how to get their sons and daughters jobs, right?
Okay.
Okay, so that's all we're doing today. We're narrowing down to get that vision clear. So why don't you take a stab at that if you can on there? Why don't we, if we have time, to do one more, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to send you the work that you just did. Sherry, what, you want us to do yours?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to send you this as a part. I might not send it till tomorrow, but I'll send the PowerPoint and this so that you can see what you've written, and then you can play with it and do that little devil's advocate discussion that we just did with Linda, right? And Seth's great, valuable, right? That there's like 94 lanes on Linda's highway. You only get one, Linda.
Yeah, and I want to do everything at the same time.
Yeah, we all do. But if we don't do it, if we don't get this done and we don't get ourselves off the mark, we never get to the next step, right?
Let me ask you a question. Is it possible to skip, in this situation, the stakeholders group, because we sent out a statewide, here's the rollout of the toolkit for families, and a lot of people came to that meeting who want the toolkit and want to know how to do it.
Yeah, how's that going for you?
Well, we haven't published it yet. They're waiting for it to, it's an intra-agency issue about who's available to actually beautify it and get it up. I'm done with it.
So pilot it.
I'm waiting for other people to
pilot
get
it.
done with it.
Take 5 parents and pilot it.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't skip any of the steps because I think you need to learn how to do them. And I think that you get value in other people's eyes on it.
Well, I think just FYI, we've done stakeholder. We have the first comprehensive transition and post-secondary program approved by the federal government in Connecticut, because we did this. We pulled together stakeholders around Think College. So I'm personally familiar with that process, and we have a tried and true method of doing that, or we wouldn't have gotten to the strategic plan and be able to continue to whoop up the troops around that. But I think that how to get that, I know who the players are. I know who needs.
So if you have your own planning cycle, you can use your own planning cycle. Okay. Most people don't have that. If you have that, and we can help you along the way to get to that next step. But I would take a look at what we're recommending versus what's in yours to make sure that you're not missing a step.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
So I would just a quick note to everybody. I don't know if I put it on there. I did earlier say John Cotter wrote a book on organizational change and change management, and I would recommend highly that everybody take a look at that book. It's a very easy read. Talks about how critical these steps are and what happens if you don't do them, and where the fail is, and it's a great book, and our process is kind of based on that, but more adopted to us as nonprofit and service-oriented organization. So let's take one last one. Let's see if we can't get there. It's the GOA, correct?
GAO.
GAO. GOA. GAO.
GAO. Georgia Advocacy Office.
Start a monthly meeting with like-minded partners.
No, that's not ours. Ours says
that advocate to get the ARPA recovery money used to create CIE.
And we're going to do enabling work. We're going to work with the SEAL and some other stakeholders to try to move the concept of competitive integrated employment forward. When we decided to do this project, we said, we know that it's only a 3-month project, but we wanted to parlay it into what we were going to do our next fiscal year, which our fiscal year starts in October and goes to set the end of September the following year. And we said we wanted not only to do that, but we hope that we can drive it to actually drive our employment work maybe for the next 5 years, if we're lucky. So our vision was one of those that was real broad. It's all about creating equity in the employment and rates for people with disabilities compared to people without disabilities. So that was just way too broad for the RISE project. For our work that we do in employment, that's a great goal. But for the RISE project, that was too big. So we decided to focus down. And because the ARPA money is coming to the state, and our state had put out an RFP to certain agencies to submit projects and ideas of what they were going to do and how much money they would need to do it. So we want to because we're the P&A and we can't actually lobby, we want to advocate with those agencies that's going to be receiving that ARPA money to not do the status quo, to work toward real competitive integrated employment. And then we're going to be doing something that we're calling Enable Work. That's a name that the SEAL could come up with. And I'm going to let my coworker Parker talk about that. Parker?
Yo, my name is, oh, do I have to wait? Sorry.
Nope, go ahead, Parker.
Okay. Yes, my name is Parker. I work with the Georgia Advocacy Office. And what Enable Work is a kind of a starter initiative for from the statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. And that was to make sure that our resources are in order for us to, again, work with everyone else and maintain our supports and services in the community. And as Cherie had mentioned, we can't lobby, right? And so we are here to support the statewide Independent Living Council and other like-minded entities in making that happen, being that we're an employment first state, right? So we will do what we can to provide education to self-advocates, legislators, and employers that are, again, working towards competitive integrated employment and Enable Work, which is the supports and services being balanced out with our, again, income.
Okay.
And I want to add that we've already kind of started the work.
Okay.
We've been doing research. We've been talking to people who could be stakeholders. We are already identified some more people that we want to talk to join our stakeholders, and we actually want to hold monthly meetings with them to get to advocate to get ARPA to do the right thing, use the money, Georgia to use the ARPA money and do the right thing and create real competitive integrated employment and enable work.
So you have 3 things down here. Okay. You've got advocate to get ARPA recovery money used for CIE. You've got develop targeted education materials for self-advocates, employers, legislators, and CIE. And then you have start a monthly meeting with like-minded partners to come up with a narrative that we can all utilize for advocacy, Medicaid buy-ins, and strategy.
Well, that's more of the steps. But I had already put down the objective, and so Parker put down some of the steps that we've been talking about. So yeah, that's where that came from.
My apologies. I think I misunderstood the assignment here. So
that's all right. So what is the thing that you want to do?
Well, we want to make sure that that ARPA recovery money is being, not doing the status quo, not funding sheltered workshops, that it's funding real supported employment, customized employment, all those things that help people with disabilities get real jobs, do competitive integrated employment.
Okay, gotcha. So what are, so because you're not the head of DDA, I like this. You got advocate for ARPA recovery money to be used to create CIE, or to fund CIE strategies, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and we've already been thinking about what some of those steps might be. We've been thinking about, there was a group that was put together right before COVID, and they were called WISE, which assess has been heading up, and their contract is going to be ending soon. So we're thinking that we might write a letter advocating for that funding to be extended, or that contract to be extended. We're thinking about, how we're going to create transformation from sheltered workshops to CIE, and capacity and bridge funds, because we also want to remind them that the settings rule is not going to disappear. It's not going away. And you might could use some of that money to do that bridge fund that you've been saying you're going to need.
Okay, let's get focused again. I mean, okay, so we gotta get ourselves focused here. The way that you succeed at something like this, thanks, Allison. The way that you succeed at doing this is you get real specific.
Right.
You get real specific, and you get one step that you're going to do, right?
Yeah.
So to me, what it sounds like is we are going to form an advocacy coalition that will prepare, that is prepared to advocate that this money is used. And I want to back you up, Sherry. Cherie, you say? Cherie?
Yeah, like the
Sorry.
Wonder, yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend whose name is spelled the exact same name, Sherry. So Cherie. I'll say to you, hold your horses on the steps we know we want to take. Not that you won't take them, but if you don't get your stakeholders involved in helping you make this decision, you've lost your power. Your superpower comes with people who are interested and influential. And if you try to go this alone, you've lost a lot of your superpowers.
No, I agree with that statement. Like I said, we've already started talking to people and reaching out to people, and we've today we identified some more people that we want to talk to.
Right, but let's be strategic about that. So let's create the table about who you want on that, right? Let's be strategic about that. So I think that the way that I would change the wording to your vision is to say, create an advocacy group that will create a group that has advocacy focus on using ARPA money for CIE, period, by November 1st.
Yeah, and I think Karen also, Kate put a note here in the chat box that I think reflects what you were saying really nicely, which is, just getting the advocacy organized around, she says, a concrete plan to advocate for changes to the state's plan for these dollars could be powerful. So.
Yeah, and Kate is here in Georgia, and she works for the Georgia Council on Developmental
Right.
Disabilities. So her name is on our list of people to contact.
Good.
Don't give it all away. Don't give it away here.
Yeah.
You got to surprise her with that goodie. So, okay. So
Great.
we're out of time. But to say, the next step in the process is, let's get these cleaned up. And if we could get folks, because we're meeting again in 2 weeks. So let's get these cleaned up and let's get them back onto this. And I'm going to send you, you can continue to work on this link and let's get them cleaned up. People take a second, third, fourth step. And I'm wondering, Sis, if we want to do some one-on-one work to get folks to that place.
Yeah. I do. I think what we should do is come back to you guys with some opportunity to connect with us between now and the next meeting, if that's all right with you, Karen. We can, if you want some coaching,
Yeah.
you know, we can provide the coaching to kind of get it fleshed out. We also watch them come up here too, so we'll see those things happening. Is that the intention? Let me just be clear that we're keeping the mural board going.
Yeah, so this people continue to have access to it, and I'll put the link in the notes when I send them out, when I send out the PowerPoint, and this, so you'll continue to have access to it. And if you want to email either Cess or I to set up a time for us to work on yours, or maybe you have a team of people that you already want to work with that you know how to get that down. But I hope that everybody saw that we're taking these. We're all on the same page. We all want the same thing, right? It's right. We're all, if we were all there, we wouldn't be, if we were all succeeding, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in here together. So yeah.
We'll put that message together for you all to give, kind of wrap the bow on top of the gift here and between now and the next meeting.
Yep.
So you know how to reach out to us. And yeah, I think our goal as a group, we come back with these things, you know, pretty well polished for the next meeting, so we can start looking at, you know, strategy coaching.
Yep. Good. Okay.
Great work today, everyone.
Yeah, it's really hard work. It's really hard work. So good. Thanks, everybody. Anybody have any final comments that you want to make before we go? And thanks to the people. I'm sorry we're running late, so I apologize for that to everybody. So
Thank you for your time for me.
yeah, absolutely. Good. Okay, everybody.